Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hey listeners, this is Peter and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. In 1974, a film called Chinatown told the story of a corrupt water conspiracy in early 20th century Los Angeles. The movie was fictional. It was also, in its essential outlines, a true story. The real story was actually much worse. It involved a city that secretly bought up an entire valley's water rights before the farmers who owned them knew what was happening. It involved a federal agency that helped the city do it while simultaneously telling the farmers it was protecting their interests. It involved dynamite, standoffs, and a community that fought back as long as it could, and then lost anyway. And it left behind a dried lake bed that still poisons the air of Eastern California to this day. Our history brief today covers some recent history news. A quick word from our sponsors.
Your pet is your bestie, your therapist, your perfect match. It's easy to love them. It's easy to protect them, too, with pet insurance coverage from Pets Best. Because it's all fun and games until they chew on something they shouldn't. And you get a vet bill to match. With perfect timing, Pets Best helps protect your furry friend and your budget from this imperfect world. Get up to 90% cash back on eligible vet bills from less than $1 a day. Pets Best has plans to cover accidents, injuries, and more, from puppies and kittens to seniors. Find your perfect match plan and get a quote at petsbest.com. Pet insurance products offered and administered by Pets Best Insurance Services, LLC, are underwritten by American Pet Insurance Company or Independence American Insurance Company. For terms and conditions, visit www.petsbest.com/policy. Products are underwritten by American Pet Insurance Company, Independence American Insurance Company, or MS Transverse Insurance Company, and administered by Pets Best Insurance Services, LLC. $1 a day premium based on 2024 average new policyholder data for accident and illness plans, pets age 0 to 10.
This day in history. On May 3rd, 1802, Washington, D.C. was officially incorporated as a city, laying the foundation for the nation's capital. On May 3rd, 1937, Margaret Mitchell won the Pulitzer Prize for her novel Gone with the Wind, a work that would deeply influence popular memory of the American South. Story of the day. The Owens Valley sits in eastern California, a long, narrow corridor between the Sierra Nevada to the west and the White Mountains to the east, running roughly 100 miles from north to south. In the early 20th century, it was a prosperous agricultural community. Farmers had built an extensive network of irrigation ditches fed by the Owens River, which ran the length of the valley before emptying into Owens Lake, a shallow, silvery body of water that had sustained the region for centuries. It was not a wealthy valley by any means, but it was a working one. And the people who had built their lives there had every reason to believe their future was secure. They were wrong. Los Angeles in 1900 was a city with a problem. Its population was growing faster than its water supply could sustain. The Los Angeles River, the city's primary water source, was just not enough. Without the water, the city's growth would stop. Fred Eaton, a former mayor of Los Angeles, had an idea. He had visited the Owens Valley and seen the river. He understood with a clarity that the valley's farmers did not yet share, that if the water in that river could be redirected south through a gravity-fed aqueduct, Running 233 miles across the desert, it could supply Los Angeles for generations. Eaton brought his idea to William Mulholland, the self educated Irish immigrant who had risen from the ditch digger to head of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and was one of the most formidable engineering minds in the American West. Mulholland saw it immediately. The question was not whether it could be built. The question was how to acquire the water rights before the valley's farmers understood what was at stake. What followed was one of the most audacious land schemes in American history. Beginning around 1904, Eaton traveled to the Owens Valley posing as a private land buyer, purchasing options on farmland and water rights without revealing his connection to Los Angeles or the purpose of the acquisitions. The farmers who sold to him believed they were dealing with a private investor. They had no idea they were selling the future of their valley to the city that would drain it. The Federal Bureau of Reclamation made the scheme possible, and considerably more scandalous. The Bureau had been surveying the Owens Valley for a federal irrigation project that would have expanded and then secured the farmers' water supply. When Los Angeles plans became known to Bureau officials, the project was quietly shelved. The Bureau withdrew its surveys, and the land it had been holding for federal projects became available for Los Angeles to purchase. The farmers had been told that the federal government was working for them. It was actually working against them. The Los Angeles Aqueduct opened on November 5, 1913. William Mulholland stood at the opening ceremony and, as the water began to flow, turned to the crowd and said 5 words that have echoed through California history ever since. There it is. Take it. The aqueduct was an extraordinary engineering achievement. 233 miles of tunnels, canals, and siphons built through some of the most inhospitable terrain in the American West, completed ahead of schedule and under budget. It was also, for the Owens Valley, a death sentence, as Los Angeles drew more and more water from the valley, eventually purchasing the town of the valley's infrastructure outright. The farms dried up. The irrigation ditches went empty. The fields turned to dust. The valley that had sustained thousands of families began slowly and then rapidly to die. The farmers did not go quietly. Through the early 1920s, as the valley's situation became desperate, a resistance movement coalesced. Valley residents dynamite sections of the aqueduct, not once, but repeatedly. The first major dynamite incident occurred in May of 1924, but then others followed. Armed groups occupied aqueduct infrastructure, releasing water back into the valley in symbolic acts of defiance that made national headlines. The resistors were not criminals or radicals. They were simply farmers, ranchers, and business people who had watched their community being systematically dismantled and had concluded that the law offered them no protection. And they were right about that. The courts consistently ruled in Los Angeles' favor. The city's financial resources were simply too vast for the valley to match. By the late 1920s, the resistance had collapsed. Los Angeles owned most of the valley, and the water was gone. Owens Lake, the terminal point of the river that had fed the valley for centuries, began to dry up as the aqueduct drew the river northward. By the 1930s, it was essentially gone. What remained was a vast, flat, 110 square miles of dry lake bed exposed to the desert wind. The exposed sediment contained arsenic and other toxic minerals that the wind then carried as dust across the region. Owens Lake became the largest single source of particulate matter air pollution in all of the United States. The communities downwind suffered elevated rates of respiratory diseases. Los Angeles was eventually ordered by the Environmental Protection Agency to implement dust control measures at a cost of hundreds of millions of dollars, decades after the damage had already been done. The Owens Valley water story did not end with the last dynamite blast, however. It is actually still unfolding. The Owens Valley is still largely owned by the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. The valley's population today is a fraction of what it was at the early 20th century peak. Owens Lake is still primarily a dry lake bed, though partial restoration efforts have created some shallow water areas. The indigenous people, whose connection to the valley predated the farmers and the city alike, lost their water and their land in the same process. A layer of the story that was largely invisible to the Anglo American farmers and has remained too often invisible in the tellings that followed. The History Brief. Today, on some history news, we're heading to central Mexico, where archaeologists have uncovered a striking and somewhat haunting discovery: a millennium old sacrificial altar tied to a powerful civilization that existed long before the Aztecs. According to reporting from Smithsonian Magazine, the altar was discovered in the Mexican state of Hidalgo during construction of a new railway line. At first glance, it appears to be a relatively small structure, just a few feet wide, but what surrounds it tells a much larger story. The altar is built in three stone tiers, carefully constructed and likely used for ceremonial purposes. But around it, archaeologists found something far more unsettling: human skulls and bones, including femurs, arranged along its sides. This wasn't just a place of ritual, it appears to be a place of sacrifice. Researchers say the altar dates back to roughly 1,000 years, to between 900 to 1150 CE, and belonged to the Toltecs, a civilization that dominated central Mexico centuries before the rise of the Aztec Empire. The Toltecs are often overshadowed by the Aztecs in popular history, but they were enormously influential. In fact, many later Mesoamerican cultures, including the Aztecs themselves, looked back at this civilization as a kind of cultural ideal. Their capital city of Tula was a major urban center, home to as many as 60,000 people, complete with pyramids, plazas, and ceremonial spaces. And this newly discovered altar appears to have been part of that very world. Alongside the human remains, archaeologists also uncovered ceramic vases, obsidian blades, and other ritual objects, suggesting that offerings and possibly sacrifices were carried out here as part of religious ceremonies. Interestingly, researchers don't expect to find complete skeletons at this site. Instead, the evidence suggests that only partial remains of sacrificed individuals were placed around the altar, possibly after decapitation or other ritual practices. This aligns with broader patterns seen across Mesoamerican cultures, where human sacrifice played a central role in religious life, not as a random act of violence, but as a deeply symbolic act tied to beliefs about the cosmos and the gods. And the location adds another layer to this story. The altar was likely situated within or near a palace courtyard, suggesting it may have been associated with elite or high status individuals rather than just the general population. In other words, this wasn't just a public ritual, it may have been part of the political and religious life of the ruling class. So, what does this discovery tell us? Well, first, it reminds us that the Aztecs didn't emerge out of nowhere. They inherited and adopted traditions from earlier civilizations. But it also highlights something perhaps more universal. Across time and cultures, humans have created rituals to make sense of their world, to seek favor from unseen forces, to impose order on uncertainty, and to connect life with something beyond it. And sometimes those rituals have left behind some powerful or perhaps unsettling traces. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you are enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both of those links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. I also hope you guys check out our YouTube channel, where I have different series that are not part of this main feed. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.